Karen Thompson was not your average traveler. She lived for the thrill of capturing moments that would make others stop scrolling through their social media feeds and pause to admire her life, or at least, the version of it she presented online. Her Instagram profile boasted thousands of followers, all eager to see where Karen's adventures would take her next. But behind the perfectly filtered photos and clever captions lay a woman who often prioritized attention over thoughtfulness. When Karen booked her trip to London, she knew this wasn't just another vacation, it was an opportunity to elevate her status as a travel influencer. She had spent weeks planning her itinerary, making sure to include all the iconic landmarks, Big Ben, the Tower of London, and most importantly, Buckingham Palace. The palace, with its regal architecture and rich history, seemed like the perfect backdrop for her dream photo shoot. Little did she know that this visit would become one of the most infamous moments of her life. On the morning of her planned excursion to Buckingham Palace, Karen woke up early, buzzing with excitement. She carefully picked out an outfit that screamed, effortlessly chic, a flowing floral dress paired with oversized sunglasses. After applying layers of makeup and styling her hair into loose waves, she grabbed her camera and headed out, determined to capture content worthy of going viral. As she walked toward the palace, she couldn't help but feel a sense of importance, as though she were stepping onto a stage meant solely for her performance. The streets leading to Buckingham Palace were alive with energy. Tourists from around the world milled about, snapping pictures and marveling at the grandeur of the royal residence. Karen joined the throng of visitors, blending in with the crowd while secretly plotting how she could stand out. When she finally arrived at the gates, her eyes immediately locked onto the guards standing sentry. Clad in their striking red tunics and towering bearskin hats, they stood motionless, exuding an air of authority and tradition. To Karen, these guards didn't seem entirely real. They looked more like statues or props placed there to enhance the aesthetic appeal of the palace grounds. Their stoic expressions fascinated her but also frustrated her. How could anyone remain so still? It almost felt unnatural. To her, they weren't people protecting centuries of royal heritage. They were simply part of the scenery, tools she could use to create the ultimate Instagram post. As she observed them, an idea began forming in her mind. Sure, plenty of tourists took respectful photos from a distance, framing themselves against the majestic backdrop of the palace. But Karen wanted something different. She wanted a photo that would stop people in their tracks, one that would spark conversations and rack up likes faster than any other image she'd ever posted. And then it hit her. The guards themselves could be the key to achieving this goal. Karen scanned the area, looking for the perfect guard to feature in her shot. Her gaze landed on one particular soldier stationed near the entrance. His posture was impeccable, his uniform pristine, and his expression utterly unreadable. He seemed oblivious to the chatter of the crowd around him, focused solely on maintaining his composure. To Karen, he appeared almost robotic, which only fueled her determination to get his attention. She approached him cautiously at first, keeping her movements slow and deliberate. Other tourists glanced at her curiously, but she ignored them, focusing instead on crafting the narrative she would later share online. "This is going to be epic," she whispered under her breath, smiling to herself as she imagined the reactions her followers would have when they saw the final result. Standing directly in front of the guard, Karen tilted her head slightly, studying him as if trying to decipher some hidden meaning behind his unwavering gaze. Then, without warning, she reached out and gently tapped his shoulder. Nothing happened, not even a twitch. Undeterred, she leaned in closer, waving her hand, inches from his face. Still, no reaction. This lack of acknowledgement only emboldened her. In her mind, the situation was becoming less about respect and more about proving a point, that she could elicit a response where others had failed. Feeling increasingly confident, Karen decided to push things further. She placed both hands on the guard's shoulders and gave him a playful nudge, giggling softly as she did so. The sound echoed faintly in the crisp morning air, drawing curious stares from nearby tourists. Some chuckled nervously, unsure whether to intervene, while others exchanged disapproving glances. None of this registered with Karen, however. She was too consumed by her own plan to notice anything else. With each passing second, her actions grew bolder. She moved closer still, angling her phone to capture the perfect selfie. Framing herself beside the towering figure of the guard, she grinned widely, clicking away as if nothing unusual was happening. What Karen failed to realize, however, was that her behavior had already crossed a line, one that would soon lead to consequences far beyond anything she anticipated. Unbeknownst to her, another guard standing nearby had taken note of the unfolding scene. His brow furrowed slightly, betraying the slightest hint of concern beneath his otherwise composed demeanor. Without hesitation, he stepped forward, his presence commanding enough to draw immediate attention. Raising a gloved hand, he gestured firmly for Karen to step back. For the first time since approaching the guard, doubt flickered across her face, but it vanished just as quickly as it appeared. Instead of retreating, she laughed awkwardly, dismissing the warning as unnecessary interference. What Karen didn't know was that her actions had set off a chain reaction within the palace grounds. Security personnel stationed nearby began converging on the area, their movements swift yet discreet. Within moments, Karen found herself surrounded, her once carefree demeanor replaced by confusion and unease. The reality of what she had done, and the gravity of the situation, was beginning to sink in, though it was already too late to undo the damage. Karen's decision to push the royal guard for a photo quickly spiraled from a seemingly harmless act into something much more serious. As she stood there, giggling nervously and snapping selfies with the towering figure beside her, she failed to notice the growing tension in the air. The tourists around her, who had initially watched with mild amusement or disapproval, now began to exchange worried glances. Some whispered among themselves, shaking their heads at Karen's audacity, while others pulled out their phones, not to take pictures of the palace but to record what was happening. The second guard, whose stern expression signaled that this was no laughing matter, stepped closer to Karen. His voice was calm but firm as he instructed her to step away immediately. "Ma'am, please move back," he said, his tone leaving no room for argument. But Karen, still caught up in her own world of seeking attention, didn't comply. Instead, she laughed awkwardly, trying to downplay the situation. "It's fine," she insisted, flashing him a sheepish smile. "I'm just taking a picture, no harm done, right?" Her dismissive attitude only made things worse. To the guards and security personnel, her actions weren't just disrespectful, they were a breach of protocol. The royal guards weren't mere props for tourists to pose with. They represented centuries of tradition, discipline, and service to the monarchy. Touching them, or attempting to provoke a reaction, was considered highly inappropriate and even offensive. Yet Karen seemed oblivious to all of this, treating the entire scenario like it was part of some light-hearted game. As the seconds ticked by, Karen continued to ignore the warnings. She adjusted her position, leaning even closer to the guard she had been pushing, determined to get the perfect angle for her selfie. Click, click, click. The sound of her phone camera echoed loudly in the otherwise quiet atmosphere. By now, a small crowd had gathered, watching intently as the scene unfolded. Some people shook their heads in disbelief, muttering under their breath about how entitled Karen appeared. Others filmed the interaction, capturing every detail so they could share it later online. Suddenly, reinforcements arrived. Several additional security officers emerged from nearby posts, their presence commanding and authoritative. They formed a loose circle around Karen, effectively isolating her from the rest of the crowd. One of them addressed her directly, speaking in a low but urgent tone. "Ma'am, you need to come with us," he said firmly. This time, there was no room for negotiation. It wasn't a request, it was an order. For the first time since approaching the guard, Karen's confidence faltered. Her laughter faded, replaced by a mix of confusion and unease. "What? Why?" she stammered, clutching her phone tightly in one hand. "I didn't do anything wrong." Despite her protests, the officers remained resolute. Ignoring her objections, they gently but firmly escorted her away from the area, leading her toward a quieter section of the palace grounds where they could address the situation privately. The walk felt endless to Karen, each step amplifying her growing sense of dread. She glanced over her shoulder, noticing that the crowd hadn't dispersed. In fact, many of the onlookers were still filming her, their phones pointed directly at her face. For someone who thrived on being in the spotlight, this sudden shift was jarring. Normally, the attention she received was positive, or at least neutral, but now she could feel the weight of judgment pressing down on her. People weren't admiring her boldness anymore. They were scrutinizing her behavior, silently condemning her for crossing a line she clearly hadn't understood. Once they reached a secluded spot near the palace entrance, one of the officers turned to face Karen. His expression was calm, but unyielding as he explained the severity of her actions. "You violated protocol by touching a member of the royal guard," he said matter-of-factly. "This isn't just a minor issue. It's taken very seriously." He went on to describe how such incidents reflected poorly not only on individuals, but also on the dignity of the institution itself. Each word landed like a blow, chipping away at Karen's defenses until she was left speechless. Despite the gravity of the situation, Karen couldn't help but cling to denial. "But I was just having fun," she protested weakly, her voice trembling slightly. "I didn't mean any disrespect." The officer nodded, acknowledging her explanation, but his demeanor remained unchanged. "Intent doesn't change the fact that rules were broken," he replied evenly. "We'll need to document this incident and review it further." By this point, Karen realized that her attempt to capture the perfect Instagram moment had backfired spectacularly. What had started as a playful idea had escalated into something far more consequential than she ever imagined. As the officers asked her for identification and began jotting down notes, she felt a wave of embarrassment wash over her. Her mind raced with thoughts of how this would look to others, her friends, her followers, strangers scrolling through social media. Would anyone believe her when she said it was all a misunderstanding? Meanwhile, outside the palace gates, news of the incident spread like wildfire. Someone in the crowd had uploaded a video of Karen's antics online, and within minutes, it gained traction across multiple platforms. Hashtags like Now Royal Guard Gate and Karen at the Palace began trending worldwide. Comment sections exploded with reactions ranging from outrage to mockery. Memes depicting Karen pushing statues, mannequins, and even inanimate objects flooded social media feeds, accompanied by captions poking fun at her behavior. Strangers dissected every frame of the video, analyzing her expressions, her words, and her body language as if they were detectives solving a case. Back inside the palace grounds, Karen remained unaware of the digital storm brewing beyond the walls. All she knew was that she was in deep trouble, and that her dream trip to London had turned into a nightmare. The officers finished documenting the incident and informed her that formal charges might be filed depending on the outcome of their investigation. Though she wasn't arrested on the spot, the threat hung over her head like a dark cloud, casting a shadow over everything she had hoped to achieve during her visit. As Karen walked away from the palace grounds later that afternoon, her shoulders slumped and her spirit crushed. She couldn't shake the feeling that she had made a grave mistake. The day had started with excitement and ambition, but it ended with humiliation and regret. Little did she know, however, that this was only the beginning of a long journey, one that would force her to confront not only the consequences of her actions but also the person she truly was beneath the curated facade she presented to the world. By the time Karen returned to her hotel room, the weight of what had happened at Buckingham Palace was beginning to sink in. She sat on the edge of her bed, staring blankly at her phone screen as notifications poured in one after another. At first, she thought it might just be messages from friends or family checking in on her trip, but when she unlocked her device, she was met with a tidal wave of comments, tags, and shares, all pointing back to the same viral video. The clip showed her laughing nervously, pushing the guard, and ignoring warnings from security officers. It had been uploaded by someone in the crowd who'd captured every awkward moment in vivid detail. The caption read, "Tourist pushes royal guard for selfie. Watch how this unfolds." Below it, Hundreds of thousands of people had chimed in with their opinions. Some called her disrespectful, while others labeled her clueless and entitled. Memes featuring exaggerated versions of her actions flooded social media platforms, turning her into an instant internet sensation, but not in the way she'd hoped. Karen scrolled through the comments, her heart sinking lower with each passing second. "This is why tourists get a bad name," one user wrote. Another added, "Who does something like this? So embarrassing." Even worse were the memes that mocked her relentlessly. One depicted her trying to push the Statue of Liberty, while another showed her shoving a lion statue with the caption, "When you think everything exists for your Instagram." Each meme felt like a punch to the gut, reminding her of how foolish she must have looked. As if that wasn't enough, news outlets picked up the story within hours. Headlines blared across websites and TV screens worldwide. American tourist causes stir at Buckingham Palace. Guard push sparks. Outrage over royal protocol. And social media shames woman after guard incident. Journalists dissected her behavior, speculating about her motives and questioning whether she understood the significance of the monarchy. Some even dug into her online presence, highlighting previous posts where she flaunted luxurious vacations and extravagant outfits. To them, she embodied everything wrong with modern influencers, selfishness disguised as ambition. Back home, Karen's loved ones started reaching out. Messages flooded her inbox, ranging from concerned inquiries to outright criticism. Her best friend texted her saying, "What were you thinking? This is everywhere." A distant cousin chimed in, "I saw your name trending online. Is this really you?" Even her coworkers weighed in, asking if the rumors were true. Each message made Karen feel smaller, more exposed, and utterly humiliated. The next morning, things only got worse. Reporters camped outside her hotel, eager to get a statement. Camera crews lined the sidewalk, microphones extended toward anyone leaving the building. When Karen peeked out her window, she saw flashes of cameras and reporters shouting questions like, "Do you regret your actions?" and "Why did you disrespect the royal guards?" She quickly drew the curtains, her face burning with shame. For the first time in her life, Karen wished she could disappear completely. Desperate to escape the chaos, she decided to speak to the press. Maybe, she thought, explaining herself would help clear up the misunderstanding. Dressed in simple clothes and wearing minimal makeup, Karen stepped outside, flanked by hotel staff who tried to shield her from the crowd. Microphones thrust forward as reporters bombarded her with questions. Blinking against the bright lights, Karen stammered out an apology. "I didn't mean any harm," she said, her voice trembling. "It was supposed to be fun, a silly photo opportunity. I didn't realize how serious it was until afterward." But instead of sympathy, her words sparked more ridicule. Critics accused her of being insincere, claiming she only apologized because she'd been caught. Others pointed out that ignorance wasn't an excuse, especially since signs clearly warned visitors not to touch or distract the guards. Her attempt to salvage her reputation backfired spectacularly. Clips of her interview went viral, further fueling the firestorm. Late-night talk show hosts joked about her antics, comedians impersonated her on stage, and parody accounts popped up on social media, mocking her tone and mannerisms. Every effort Karen made to defend herself seemed to dig the hole deeper. Meanwhile, the fallout extended beyond public opinion. Back home, her employer launched an internal investigation into whether her behavior reflected poorly on the company. Though Karen worked in marketing, not directly related to her travel influencer persona, the scandal cast doubt on her professionalism. Colleagues whispered behind her back, and her boss hinted that suspension might be necessary pending the outcome of the review. Brands she collaborated with also began severing ties, citing concerns over associating with someone embroiled in controversy. Emails arrived daily, informing her that partnerships had been terminated or put on hold indefinitely. Karen's once thriving career as an influencer crumbled before her eyes. Sponsorships dried up, follower counts dropped, and engagement rates plummeted. The very platform she relied on for validation turned against her, amplifying her humiliation tenfold. Strangers continued to mock her relentlessly, creating new, memes and hashtags that ensured her infamy wouldn't fade anytime soon. Feeling cornered, Karen retreated from the world. She stopped posting on social media altogether, unable to face the constant barrage of criticism. Instead, she spent hours alone in her hotel room, replaying the events of the past few days in her mind. How had everything spiraled so far out of control? What had possessed her to act so recklessly? And most importantly, how could she possibly fix the damage she'd caused? For the first time in years, Karen allowed herself to reflect honestly on her motivations. She realized that her obsession with capturing the perfect photo stemmed from a deeper insecurity, a need for external validation that overshadowed common sense and respect for others. In her quest for likes and followers, she had lost sight of basic human decency. The realization hit her hard, forcing her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself. Though the public backlash showed no signs of slowing down, Karen vowed to change. She couldn't undo what had happened, but she could take responsibility for her actions and learn from them. With nothing left to lose, she drafted a heartfelt apology to post online. It wasn't written to gain sympathy or win back followers. It was meant to acknowledge her mistakes and express genuine remorse. In the post, Karen admitted that she hadn't fully understood the gravity of her actions until it was too late. She apologized to the royal guards, the palace staff, and everyone who had been offended by her behavior. She acknowledged that her desire for attention had blinded her to the importance of respecting boundaries and traditions. Finally, she promised to use this experience as a turning point, committing to live more thoughtfully and responsibly moving forward. The response to her apology was mixed. Some dismissed it as insincere, accusing her of performing damage control rather than truly changing. Others appreciated her willingness to admit fault and expressed hope that she would grow from the ordeal. Either way, Karen knew the road ahead wouldn't be easy. Rebuilding trust would take time, patience, and consistent effort. But for the first time in weeks, she felt a glimmer of hope, a chance to rewrite her story, not as someone seeking fame, but as someone striving to do better. Though the incident at Buckingham Palace would haunt her for years to come, Karen resolved to let it shape her future in positive ways. She couldn't erase the past, but she could choose how to move forward. And that choice gave her a renewed sense of purpose. Karen's return home was anything but triumphant. The journey back felt like stepping into a storm she couldn't escape. As her plane touched down, she braced herself for the reality waiting on the other side of the airport doors. Her phone buzzed incessantly during the flight, each notification a reminder of the chaos still swirling around her name. By the time she collected her luggage and made her way through customs, Karen's nerves were frayed. She half expected cameras to flash and reporters to ambush her right there in the terminal. Thankfully, no one seemed to recognize her, at least not yet. But the relief was short-lived. Outside the airport, friends and acquaintances bombarded her with messages, some offering hollow sympathy and others expressing outright disbelief at her behavior. "How could you be so reckless?" one friend texted bluntly. Another chimed in with, "I saw your face everywhere online. Are you okay?" Each message chipped away at whatever confidence Karen had left, leaving her feeling isolated and humiliated. Even her family, who usually supported her unconditionally, struggled to understand why she'd acted the way she did. The hardest blow came from her workplace. When Karen arrived at the office the following Monday, hoping to slip back into her routine unnoticed, she quickly realized that wasn't going to happen. Her co-workers avoided eye contact, whispering behind closed doors whenever she passed by. Some even laughed nervously when they thought she wasn't looking. It didn't take long for her boss to call her into a private meeting. Sitting across from him, Karen listened as he explained the situation carefully but firmly. "Karen," he began, leaning forward with a concerned expression, "we've received complaints from clients about your recent incident. They're worried it reflects poorly on our company values." He paused, letting the weight of his words sink in before continuing. "Until we can assess the situation further, we'll need to place you on temporary suspension." The news hit Karen like a punch to the gut. Suspension? Over something that happened thousands of miles away? She wanted to argue, to explain that she hadn't meant any harm, but deep down she knew protesting wouldn't change anything. Her actions spoke louder than any justification she could offer now. Nodding silently, she accepted the decision and left the office, feeling more defeated than ever. At home, the isolation grew worse. Brands that once clamored to collaborate with her severed ties without hesitation. Emails flooded her inbox daily, politely informing her that their partnerships were terminated or indefinitely postponed. One email stood out. "Due to recent events, we feel it's best to part ways. We wish you all the best moving forward." The tone was polite, but the message stung deeply. With each cancellation, Karen's income dwindled, forcing her to confront financial uncertainty alongside her emotional turmoil. Social media became unbearable. Followers who once praised her glamorous lifestyle turned on her overnight. Comment sections under her old posts filled with venomous remarks. "Remember when you pushed that guard so cringe," read one comment. Another added, "Delete your account already, we don't want to see you here." Strangers dissected every aspect of her personality, mocking not just her actions at Buckingham Palace but also her fashion choices, her captions, and even her smile. The toxicity overwhelmed her, making her question whether deleting her accounts entirely might be the only solution. Yet despite the pressure mounting from all sides, Karen resisted the urge to vanish completely. Instead, she decided to address the backlash head-on. She drafted a lengthy apology post, pouring her heart into every word. In it, she admitted her mistakes openly, acknowledging how selfish and disrespectful her behavior had been. She expressed gratitude to those who pointed out her errors, vowing to learn from them. "I let my desire for attention blind me to what truly matters: respect, humility, and understanding," she wrote. "I'm sorry for embarrassing myself, my loved ones, and anyone else affected by my actions." When she finally hit post, Karen felt a mix of fear and relief. Fear because she didn't know how people would react, and relief because she'd finally taken ownership of her role in the mess. The response was predictably mixed. Some dismissed her apology as insincere, accusing her of performing damage control rather than genuinely changing. Others appreciated her honesty, praising her for owning up to her mistakes. One commenter wrote, "It takes courage to admit when you're wrong. I hope this teaches you to think twice before acting impulsively again." While the public reaction remained divided, Karen found solace in the fact that she'd tried to do the right thing. For weeks afterward, she stayed off social media, focusing instead on rebuilding her life offline. She spent hours reflecting on her motivations, questioning why she had become so obsessed with validation in the first place. Slowly but surely, she began to see patterns in her behavior, patterns rooted in insecurity and a desperate need for approval. Determined to turn things around, Karen started volunteering at local charities. At first, the idea intimidated her. After months of hiding from the world, stepping into unfamiliar territory felt daunting. But as she served meals at a homeless shelter or helped organize clothing drives, she discovered something unexpected: fulfillment. Helping others gave her a sense of purpose that likes and followers never could. For the first time in years, Karen felt genuinely happy. Not because someone complimented her outfit or liked her photo, but because she was contributing to something bigger than herself. Her newfound focus on giving back didn't erase the past, though. Reminders of her infamous moment lingered, popping up unexpectedly in memes or casual conversations. Friends occasionally teased her about pushing boundaries, and strangers sometimes recognized her in public, smirking knowingly. These moments stung, but Karen learned to handle them with grace. Rather than shrinking away in embarrassment, she used them as opportunities to apologize sincerely and move forward. Over time, Karen's efforts began to pay off. Though her follower count never returned to its former glory, she noticed subtle shifts in how people perceived her. Former critics softened their tone, acknowledging her attempts to grow and improve. New acquaintances admired her dedication to volunteering, unaware of the scandal that once defined her. Even her employer reconsidered her suspension, allowing her to return to work after several months of reflection. Still, Karen knew she couldn't undo the damage entirely. The video of her pushing the royal guard continued to resurface periodically, ensuring that her misstep wouldn't fade from memory anytime soon. But instead of letting it define her, Karen chose to frame it as a lesson, a painful, but necessary, chapter in her journey toward becoming a better person. She kept a framed photo of Buckingham Palace in her apartment, not as a trophy but as a constant reminder of the day she let ambition overshadow respect. Through it all, Karen emerged stronger and wiser. She learned that true influence doesn't come from viral moments or flashy photos. It comes from meaningful connections and genuine acts of kindness. Though the road to redemption was long and difficult, Karen embraced it wholeheartedly, determined to ensure that her legacy would eventually overshadow her greatest humiliation. Months had passed since the infamous incident at Buckingham Palace, but its shadow still lingered over Karen's life. While she had taken significant steps to rebuild herself, the journey was far from easy. Every day brought new challenges, forcing her to confront not only the consequences of her actions, but also the deeper insecurities that had driven her behavior in the first place. Yet with each hurdle, Karen grew more determined to transform her life into something meaningful and authentic. One of the hardest parts of moving forward was dealing with the occasional reminders of her past mistake. Memes featuring her pushing statues or exaggerated caricatures of her face continued to pop up online, often accompanied by snarky captions like, "When you think everything is fair game for a selfie." Sometimes these posts would go viral, again, reigniting discussions about her behavior. Friends and acquaintances would send them to her jokingly, though their laughter carried an edge of discomfort. Strangers, too, occasionally recognized her in public, pointing and whispering, "Isn't that the woman who pushed the guard?" At first, these moments left Karen feeling exposed and humiliated all over again. She'd instinctively lower her head, avoiding eye contact, as if trying to shrink herself out of existence. But over time, she realized running away wouldn't solve anything. Instead, she started using these encounters as opportunities to practice humility. When someone approached her with a smirk or a sarcastic comment, Karen responded with a calm smile and a sincere apology. "You're absolutely right," she'd say. "I made a huge mistake and I'm working hard to learn from it." This shift in attitude surprised many people. Some were taken aback by her willingness to acknowledge her error so openly, while others softened their judgment, impressed by her resilience. A few even admitted they admired her ability to own up to her faults instead of hiding from them. These small victories gave Karen hope, reinforcing her belief that change was possible, even after making such a colossal misstep. Her volunteer work became a cornerstone of her transformation. At first, Karen had joined local charities almost out of desperation, seeking any distraction from the chaos of her public downfall. But as she immersed herself in helping others, she discovered a profound sense of fulfillment that social media fame never provided. Whether she was serving meals at a soup kitchen, organizing fundraisers for underprivileged children, or cleaning up parks on weekends, Karen found joy in contributing to causes greater than herself. The people she met through volunteering also played a crucial role in reshaping her perspective. Many of them came from backgrounds vastly different from hers, people struggling with homelessness, single parents juggling multiple jobs, or elderly individuals living alone without family. Nearby, listening to their stories opened Karen's eyes to the struggles others faced daily, struggles she had never considered during her days chasing Instagram likes. Their resilience inspired her to be more compassionate and less self-centered. Volunteering also helped Karen reconnect with old friends who had distanced themselves after the scandal. One Saturday morning, while sorting donations at a community center, she ran into Sarah, a childhood friend she hadn't spoken to in years. Initially, Sarah seemed hesitant, unsure how to approach Karen given everything that had happened, but as they worked side by side, packing boxes and chatting casually, the awkwardness melted away. By the end of the day, Sarah admitted she had judged Karen harshly based on what she saw online. "But seeing you here today, doing this work, it makes me realize there's more to you than those headlines," she said warmly. Encouraged by moments like these, Karen decided to lean even further into her newfound purpose. She began documenting her volunteer experiences, not for clout or attention, but to spread awareness about the organizations she supported. Her posts were simple and heartfelt, focusing on the people she met and the impact of their efforts rather than showcasing herself. To her surprise, her audience responded positively. Followers who had once ridiculed her now praised her for turning her life around and using her platform for good. Karen's professional life also showed signs of improvement. After months of suspension, her employer welcomed her back to work, impressed by her commitment to personal growth. Though her colleagues initially treated her cautiously, their attitudes gradually shifted as they witnessed her dedication and professionalism. In meetings, Karen spoke thoughtfully, offering ideas that demonstrated her renewed focus on teamwork and integrity. Slowly but surely, she earned back their trust. Despite these positive changes, Karen knew healing wasn't linear. There were days when doubt crept in, whispering cruel reminders of her past mistakes. On particularly tough mornings, she'd scroll through old comments or revisit the viral video, punishing herself for what she had done. During these moments, she leaned heavily on the support system she had built, her family, close friends, and mentors from her volunteer work. They reminded her that growth takes time and that setbacks didn't negate progress. One pivotal moment occurred when Karen received an invitation to speak at a local high school career day. The teacher organizing the event explained that she wanted students to hear from someone who had experienced failure and learned from it. At first, Karen hesitated, unsure whether sharing her story publicly was a good idea. But after much deliberation, she accepted the offer, viewing it as another step toward accountability. Standing in front of the classroom, Karen felt nervous but resolved. She recounted her trip to London, her misguided attempt to capture the perfect photo, and the whirlwind of consequences that followed. She didn't sugarcoat anything. Instead, she laid bare her mistakes, vulnerabilities, and lessons learned. The students listened intently, their expressions shifting from curiosity to empathy as she spoke. When she finished, several raised their hands to ask questions ranging from practical advice, how do you deal with haters, to deeper reflections. Do you ever feel like giving up? Afterward, a student approached Karen shyly, thanking her for being honest. I always thought famous people had it all figured out, the girl admitted. It's kind of comforting to know everyone messes up sometimes. Karen smiled, touched by the sentiment. For the first time in a long time, she felt proud. Not of her past achievements, but of the person she was becoming. As weeks turned into months, Karen's transformation gained momentum. She continued volunteering regularly, expanded her advocacy work, and maintained open communication with her followers, sharing updates about her journey without seeking validation. Though remnants of her scandal remained, a stray meme here, a sarcastic comment there, they no longer defined her. Instead, they served as reminders of how far she had come and how much she had grown. Looking back, Karen realized the incident at Buckingham Palace had been both her lowest point and her greatest teacher. It forced her to confront uncomfortable truths about herself, dismantling the facade she had built and revealing the insecure, approval-seeking person beneath. But it also gave her the chance to start over, to redefine success not by external measures but by internal values. Respect, humility, and kindness became her guiding principles, shaping every decision she made moving forward. Though Karen couldn't erase the past, she refused to let it dictate her future. With each passing day, she embraced her second chance, determined to live a life aligned with the lessons she had learned. And while she knew challenges lay ahead, she faced them with courage, knowing she was no longer the same person who had stood outside Buckingham Palace, blinded by ambition and oblivious to boundaries. Karen's journey toward redemption was far from a straight path. It was messy, filled with moments of triumph and setbacks that tested her resolve. Yet as time went on, she began to see the incident at Buckingham Palace not just as a source of shame but as a turning point, a moment that forced her to confront who she truly was and who she wanted to become. This realization didn't come overnight. It took months of reflection, hard work, and a willingness to embrace vulnerability in ways she never imagined. One of the most significant changes in Karen's life was her relationship with social media. Once a platform she used to chase validation and craft a perfect image, it now served a different purpose. She still posted occasionally, but her content shifted dramatically. Instead of glamorous selfies or carefully curated travel photos, she shared stories about her volunteer work, highlighting the people and causes she cared about. Her captions were raw and honest, often discussing the lessons she had learned along the way. For example, one post featured a photo of her helping clean up a local park. In the caption she wrote, "A year ago, I thought happiness came from likes and comments. Now I know it comes from making a difference even in small ways. Grateful for this community and the chance to give back." The response was overwhelmingly positive. Followers who had once ridiculed her praised her transformation, calling her an inspiration. Some even reached out privately, sharing their own struggles and thanking her for being so open about hers. This newfound connection with her audience surprised Karen. She hadn't expected people to relate to her story so deeply, but they did. Many confessed they too had made mistakes, some public, others private, and felt trapped by guilt or regret. By sharing her journey, Karen inadvertently created a safe space for others to reflect on their own lives and consider how they could grow. It was a role she never anticipated, but one she embraced wholeheartedly. Her advocacy work expanded beyond volunteering. Inspired by the feedback she received online, Karen started hosting workshops and speaking engagements focused on personal growth and accountability. At first, these events were small, held in community centers or libraries, but word quickly spread. People admired her authenticity and appreciated the practical advice she offered, especially when it came to overcoming failure and rebuilding trust. During one such workshop, Karen shared a strategy that had helped her stay grounded during difficult times, writing letters to her future self. "Whenever I feel overwhelmed," she explained to the group, "I write down what I'm feeling and why. Then, I address the letter to my future self, someone who has grown stronger and wiser. It reminds me that no matter how tough things are right now, I won't always feel this way." The exercise resonated deeply with participants, many of whom adopted it as part of their own healing process. Seeing the impact her words had on others reinforced Karen's belief that her past mistakes could serve a greater purpose. Though she couldn't undo what happened, she could use it to inspire change, not just in herself but in those around her. As her confidence grew, Karen decided to take another bold step, visiting Buckingham Palace again. The idea terrified her at first. Memories of that fateful day haunted her. The laughter, the guards' stoic expressions, the crowd's disapproving stares. But something inside her whispered that returning might be the final piece of closure she needed. With trembling hands, she booked a flight to London, determined to face the place where everything had unraveled. When she arrived, Karen approached the palace gates with a mix of anxiety and determination. The sight of the iconic building stirred a swirl of emotions: shame, regret, but also a flicker of pride for how far she had come. This time she stood respectfully behind the barriers, observing the guards with admiration rather than entitlement. Their discipline and dedication reminded her of the values she had worked so hard to embody: respect, humility, and grace. After spending some time reflecting, Karen sought out a nearby gift shop. There, she purchased a postcard featuring an image of Buckingham Palace. On the back, she wrote a short note: "To the royal guards and everyone affected by my actions, I am truly sorry. Thank you for teaching me lessons I will carry for the rest of my life." She left the postcard at the palace's visitor center, hoping it might reach someone connected to the institution she had once disrespected. The gesture brought Karen a profound sense of peace. For so long she had carried the weight of her mistake, like a heavy chain around her neck. Returning to the scene of her misstep allowed her to lay that burden down, if only partially. She knew forgiveness, from others and from herself, was a lifelong process, but taking this step felt like progress. Back home, Karen continued building her new life, one rooted in authenticity and service. Her career flourished as she channeled her experiences into motivational speaking and writing. She published a book titled Beyond the Selfie, Finding Meaning in a Connected World, which became a bestseller. Readers praised its candid tone and actionable advice, saying it resonated with anyone navigating the complexities of modern life. Though reminders of her past occasionally surfaced, Karen no longer let them define her. Memes and jokes about pushing boundaries still popped up online, but instead of cringing, she laughed along with them. After all, humor was a sign that people remembered her, but not just for her mistakes. They also remembered her resilience and growth. Karen's relationships deepened as well. Friends and family who had distanced themselves after the scandal welcomed her back with open arms, proud of the person she had become. Even strangers warmed to her, recognizing her sincerity and commitment to doing better. One day, while volunteering at a food bank, a man approached her and said, "You're Karen, aren't you? I saw your story online. Just wanted to say you've inspired me to be kinder to myself and to others." His words brought tears to her eyes, reminding her of the ripple effect of positive change. Looking back on her journey, Karen realized that true redemption wasn't about erasing the past, but learning to live alongside it. The incident at Buckingham Palace would always be part of her story, but it no longer controlled her. Instead, it shaped her into someone stronger, wiser, and more compassionate. She kept the framed photo of the palace in her apartment as a reminder, not of humiliation, but of hope. Hope that even our biggest failures can lead to our greatest transformations. In the end, Karen understood that life isn't measured by perfection, but by progress. And though her road to redemption had been long and challenging, she wouldn't trade it for anything. Each step, no matter how painful, had brought her closer to the person she was meant to be.